Okay. So basically, Flexbox is uh, there was a lot of issues with the older CSS. So when the CSS originally started, uh, if you remember, there used to be a thing called float left, float right, right, and then which was kind of a hack. And then they did introduce the other position property and all that stuff to improve. There were tables a long time ago, and a lot of people were using table for layouting, but it wasn't that great, and it wasn't the right solution to do it. So then eventually they introduced Flex. Okay, and that was around a few years ago. Well, original Flex came, I think, even few years before that, but it became kind of standardized later on. Uh, Currently, if you are using, uh, uh, let's say, the all the latest browsers support it. Chrome supports it, because Chrome has like this continuous um, release cycle. So usually, if you're using Chrome, you should not worry about it. Same with the Firefox. I'm not sure about the Safari, but it supports it. But I'm not sure about the older version. Uh, for IE, I believe IE 11 and after supports it. And I think 10 also was supported, but there are it's little different. It's initial version of Flex. So um, so when you use it, you have to basically make sure that you are compatible. Depends on your requirement of your project, right? um, at my work, we decided to use it because we were not supporting anything IE 10 and before. So I think nowadays any project that you worked on pretty much can support Flex in that case. So it's a pretty good technology. um, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good technology, and it solves a lot of issues that we had before. Okay, so yeah, today we're gonna cover that, um, and um, let's start with building a very small example.
Hemel, can you share your screen?
Oh, did I didn't share the screen? Okay, my bad. Okay, can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on just a second. All right, so um, let's do um, let's say build a list. Okay, and now you can do um, divs as well. I'm just gonna build a list, and I'm going to have multiple LIs on it. Okay, and inside there will be, let's say, class. I'm gonna call it flex one, and I'll show you what it is, but let's just first build it. So I have a 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so if I render it, it looks kind of this. Okay, kind of ugly. And we already know that you can format this as nicely. So all you have to do is in a UL, which is the list parent, you can do, let's say, so we need to remove this dots, right? So you would say list style type equal to none. We do that and then run it. You'll get rid of that those things, and by default it has some paddings and margin, so I'm just going to remove that as well. So padding 0 pixel and margin 0 pixel. Okay, so now I have this, and let's have some border. I can have, let's say, 1 pixel dotted. Let's make it red. Okay, so this shows me my entire UL. All right, and as for the LI, I can provide also a border, so I know how big they are. So I can say a border. Let's do also 1 pixel, solid and black. Okay, and then I can put little bit of a margin here. So margin 0.5 em. So this is relative to the parent size, and padding also 0.5 em. Okay. All right. So it looks kind of nice now. Okay. So now let's begin the magic. So just think of Flexbox is there is a relationship between parent and children. Okay. So here the parent is nothing but the UL, and all the children are LI. Okay. It could be any children, but it's just a relationship between parent and children. And so in order to use Flex, you need to give a parent a Flex display type Flex. Okay. So you would say display, okay, display, and simply say Flex. Okay. So when I do that and run it, see what happens. So by default, Flex is like inline. So it always puts things inline. Okay, so that's the first thing to notice. Remember we had, do you guys remember all the display properties from previously that we learned?
Yeah, block, inherit.
Yeah, so we had the block, we had the inline block, we have inline, we have inherit, but the main three guys are block, inline block, and inline. And remember the block, by default, most of the elements are kind of like a blockish, and they would kind of pile on each other, right? When you have an inline block, it's more like this. So they kind of next to each other, correct? Um, so Flex also by default is like an inline, but we're not gonna call inline. Flex, it's more like columns and rows. Okay, so in this case, it's rows, right? Because they are sitting side by side, so it's a row. Okay, I can change this behavior by changing. If I want to make them column, all I have to do is here I would say flex direction, and I would say column. Okay, and now it's like a block. And again, remember, by default, it will take the 100% of the screen, right? Because when you're a block, when you're piling on each other, your width is determined by the your parent, right? But when you are rows, your width is determined by the content itself, right? So if I remove this, so by default it's row, right? So if I If I run it, it's the content. So instead of one, if I just do 1e, right, then it determines by the content itself. Okay, but doesn't have to be. We can change in this because the think of Flexbox. Always think of Flexbox as a flexible box, which means you can do a lot of things, flexible things with it.
So we can resolve the screen resolution issues. I mean, for example, we need to show a layout in different resolutions, like maybe in iPhone, iPad, in the desk, like on a big screen. So we can incorporate the screen resolutions using Flexbox ML.
The a lot of Flexbox things you would do it in a percentage. Okay. So you would be automatically resolving the screen. So the good thing about Flexbox is it does a lot of auto calculation. So you don't have to do it. So for example, I have here 6 pieces, right? And let's say these 6 things are images, right? Now, if you have a cell phone where you want a completely different view um, than an iPad or a regular computer, then you can set the percent. I mean, you can use responsive and you can do media query to actually change in percentage. But so by default, a lot of people use percentage in Flexbox. So you can you can you can divide the screen in a visually pleasing way, right? Rather than putting the fixed width and height and all that stuff. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ML.
So we will see how it's gonna work with the width and all that stuff. Okay. But right now I'll say that because of the flexibility, instead of giving a fixed things, we are letting it know that, okay, I want it certain way, that I want you to fit yourself certain ways. That's why it's called flexible box. So try not to fix the width and all that stuff. Okay, and as we go along, we'll see exactly how it works. Okay, and then you can ask some more questions. Um, Another thing is, if I reduce this window, what happens? It doesn't wrap, right? So by default, it doesn't wrap. Um, and that can be changed. So you can say flex dash wrap is wrap. Okay, now it's not going to change anything until I start doing this, and now it automatically, see, you see the beauty of it. It adjusts itself. Now it may not be the way I like it right now because I haven't done much with it, but it's more like if you have a textual things, and if you squeeze a paragraph, how the text kind of moves around, right? So that's how it does. Okay. Um, I can also change the direction on this. So right now it's 1 to 6. What if I want 6 to 1? Right? So the way you would do it, you would say flex direction, and you would say row reverse. right? So now it's basically switch itself, right? 6 is first and 5. So it's not replacing 1 with 6. It's actually flipping the entire row, as you can see, right? So before the 1 was all the way on the other side, now it's all the way on the opposite side. Okay, so it doesn't reverse the element only, it just flips the entire row actually. Okay, same thing if I have a column, then I would have to say column reverse. Now it's 6 1, but again, because it's 100% width, uh, column reverse would be completely opposite, right? But row and row reverse are not completely opposite, because when you flip the row, if there's a space on the other side, now the space would move on the other side as well. Okay. Any questions so far? So far we have done everything to the parent. We haven't done anything to the child. And most of the cases that is correct. You do a lot of things to the parent, right? To tell that, okay, how do you want to adjust your children? Okay. Um, any questions so far? All right. So um, remember the last two, the row and a wrap. So this two, we can actually combine this two into one. So we can say called flex flow, and we can say column and um, let's say wrap, right? So we don't need a direction here. So the flow would take care of both of them. So the first is direction, and the second is the flex wrap. Okay. Obviously, it's not going to make any difference because we just replace it with it. All right. So this is pretty cool. Now let's just convert back to row and column, right? Oh, sorry, row. Now, what if I wanna? So right now, it starts from. Well, let's not do the reverse right now. And let's keep it this way. So there is another property that decides where it starts from, right or left, right? So right now it's starting from left. So the property is flex justify content. Okay. Here we can say flex start, which is a default actually. So it's always start from left to right. But if I do flex end, then it would do right to left. Okay. So remember we did the reverse. Now let's make this row reverse, and this way it's going to be Now it's completely opposite of the 1 2 3 1 2 6. Now it's 6 to 1. So if I want this way, I have to really do the row reverse and flex end. Then I will. Otherwise, it will always start from the other side. Okay. So this is a nice trick. Um, to again, there are a lot of syntax to remember, but hopefully, it's not that as complex as those display property, like block and inline block and other stuff, right? Uh, you still might will be using those with the combination of where you need a fixed width and all that stuff. This is more like kind of a flexible content. Okay, so you would use it more like your main containers, layouts, images, things like that, where you want to adjust things, you know, visually rather than you want looking for like a fixed width or stuff, something like that. Okay. What if I want to do center? So instead of flex end, remember flex starts from left and end starts from um, right. In this case, because it's a reverse, it's reversing it. So I'm just gonna put the reverse comment, and now it's end this way. But I can actually center it, and now it's exactly the center. Okay. This was very difficult. Remember, we had to use when we used the what was that? Uh, not display property, but if I want to do this in with the blocks and inline blocks, I had to use position absolute for the parent, and then I have to say center it by putting 50, like top 50% and all that stuff. I don't really have to do all the calculations are done for me now inside. So it actually figures out what is the total width and how it's going to be centered. So this is really cool. Um, okay. What else? Um, you can actually let's look at what happens when I squeeze it. It's a no wrap, so it's actually squeezing nicely, and look how it's centering. So that the top is also centering and the bottom is also centering really nicely, right? Let's make it a little bit longer so we can see it a little bit better. And as you can see, it does all the calculations for you, so you don't have to worry about what are the elements and how it's going to be centered, which previously you had to. So this is what you were talking about, right? How it does it. It's magic, right? As long as you don't care about what the width and all is going to be, it will do it. There are some other which actually adjust accordingly, and we'll look at it later. But this is the beauty of it, right? What about the vertical? So let's say if I give it a little height. 200 pixel, right? Oh, yeah. You see, even height gets adjusted automatically. That's what actually Flexbox really means. It flexibly adjusts everything for you. You just have to say, oh, I want it centered, I want it this way, I want it that way. Okay. Um, okay, so uh, let's. If you can also align items vertically center, you just have to say align items and center. Okay. Now, as you can see, it's doing it also its magic by aligning everything to center vertically. So now this is vertically and horizontally centered, everything, all the content. Okay. um, so even here what happened, previously I gave the height to the UL and all the li was automatically fitting in that height. Again, because of the flexibility, it said, okay, you know what, this makes sense to me. But since I said center, align item center, it said, okay, then then there is no need to give that a height, right? So it aligning in automatically center. So that's a flexibility for it, right? So it kind of understand what you're trying to do, and it does it accordingly. Okay. Any questions so far? Bhuvaneshwar, you said no to something. Do you have any question? Okay. All right. Yeah, this is really cool. So you can also, if you use React Native or something, uh, you have to use Flex by default. Okay, that's the only thing that I understand. So you cannot do all other display properties. You have to use Flex um, for the mobile. So that's why it's really nice. Because and since mobile, it needs to do this magical automatic centering and automatic all that stuff. Um, it works really well. Okay. Okay. What about here? I have all the spaces, right? What if I wanna do something where I don't want all the spaces around it, especially when I do this, I want even spaced. So what I would do here is instead of justify center, justify content center, which is a horizontal centering, I would simply say space between. Okay. Anybody guess what's going to happen here?
Does it justify? I mean, space between the boxes. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, if you look at the both sides, between the end edge on the left and one, there is a lot of space here, right? And then there is a lot of space here as well. And then the spaces between each boxes are uh, little. Okay. So if I do space between, guess what happens? It evenly distribute. It is centering, but it's evenly distributing all the space. Okay. The only problem is now the space on the edge is little less, well, way less than the one in between. The beauty of this thing is, the worst thing of this thing is this. When I do this something like this, when you have two items, it's gonna sit at the end because it's only two item. It will think, okay, I'm gonna have to divide space everything in between here, right? Uh, so to fix this, you can say space around. Now it's going to say, okay, now I need to distribute all the space, even on the edge. So now if I do this, now it has equal spaces on all the sides. So imagine if you have an image gallery, right? This would this would this would be really nice. You don't have to do anything. It just automatically adjusts all your images in a nice format, right? So yeah, okay. Uh, Still, the thing is, it has like this edge has half the size of that it's in between, right? You can see that still. Before there was no space. Now it's half the size because it assumes that um, you need half the size, otherwise it looks too spaced, right? So I believe there is a space evenly. Let me try that. I haven't used this. Now it's really equally spaced everywhere. So based on what you really want to do, you can pick one of the options. Now you can see it's really evenly spaced, everything. Right? It's, it's like a responsive automatically, right? I don't really have to say, okay, if it's this size, do this. It's automatically responsive in a way. So this is really, really cool. Um, and so that's pretty much, oh yeah, there's another one, I believe, called stretch. Okay, what stretch? What do you think this is going to do? All right, let's try it out. It stretches vertically, actually. Now here, uh, let me let me think of an example where I can show it. Oh yeah, because of this, align item center. Uh, but well, I still need a height. Yeah, it stretches vertically, as you can see. Like vertical sizes are automatically stretch as I do this. Well, this doesn't make sense, but anyway, yeah. So it's kind of stretch is kind of interesting. I haven't really like if you have like a tiles and that automatically should vertically fix itself and horizontally you would use it. But I still have trouble understanding it because if you want to center it and stretch it, it doesn't really do it. Um, yeah. So I've never used stretch before, but there might be some interesting application for it. Okay. All right. So that's all about the the parent, right? What about the individual allies? Um, so you can do a lot with individual uh, allies, individual flex items. So as I said, this is called flex container. So the wrapper around your element is called flex container, and the individual item inside are called flex items, right? So what are the things you need to do with flex items? Um, One of the things, by natural, all the items are in the order they are defined right now. So it's a 1 is defined first, 2 is defined second, and so on, right? So they're always going to follow that. If you have a row, then it's going to do left to right. If it has a column, then it's going to do top to bottom, right? Remember, we had the z index, where we control which one it's going to be first or second, regardless of its order in uh, the DOM hierarchy. So here you can do the same thing. So remember, we did the flex1 class here. So instead of flex1, I'm just going to do something else. I'm going to call every other element flex2 class, right? And here I'll define um, the classes itself. Okay. So let's do something interesting so we can see them in action. So let's say the flex1 class for the flex items. Let's say, how do we do this? Okay, let's just change its view first. So I'm gonna put border differently. Let's put 5 pixel dotted and blue. Okay. So every other item, which was flex 1, is now bluish, right? Similarly, for flex 2, I can say border 5 pixel, us uses dashes, and green. Okay. Did I make any mistakes here? Border. Why is it not taking? Let's see. Flex 2, which is correct. Well, let's just keep it dotted. Solid. Is that because of that? Is it dashed or dash? I forgot. Let me check. Dashed. Oh, dashed. Green. That's why. All right. That's good. Like, it looks kind of ugly. Let's make it solid. All right. So now you can see the order, right? Now, what if I want all the dotted ones first, and then green ones later, even though they're not defined that way in the um, DOM. Anybody knows how to do that? All right. So say it again. Yeah, so what I want is the dotted ones. I want them um, in the front, and then all the green ones later on. So you should see like 1, 3, and 5, and then you should see 2, 4, and 3, or 2, 4, and
It is
6.
reverse, right?
If you do reverse, then they would be alternative, right? I want uh, clusters, like all the dotted ones should stay together, and all the uh, solid ones should stay together. Okay, so Flex has indexes, order. Okay, by default, I believe it's 0. Don't quote me on it. I can give you, but you can change the order. So we can say order. Let's see if it's correct. If I say order 1, yeah, I think it's a 0 by default. Let me try this. Yeah, so by default order is 0. If I change 1 to 1, which means I want, order really means that I want them in the front. Okay, so right now flex 1 is what? 1, 3, and 5, right? So they're all gonna come in first. Oh, 1, 3, and 5. Hold on. Order 2. Is that correct? Yeah. So whichever order means larger first. So first is gonna come first, and then second gonna come second. So if I do 3, let's say 4, it should not change much. If I say 3, it should not change much. But if I do 4 and 3, it should reverse, right? Yeah. So the 4 comes later, smaller comes first, basically. Okay. So you can do that. If I want a completely different order for each one of them, I can create a different class for each one of them, and I can give the real order in them, so they can be arranged accordingly, right? So this is pretty useful, so you can arrange things out of order if you need to. Now you must be wondering, like, when do I do this kind of stuff, right? Believe me, in CSS, you will one day you will need to do something like this. I'll give you one example. Um, I used to work for one of my friends' company where they have like some sort of it's like an e-commerce web page, and it's a built-in website. So I cannot change its. They didn't allow me to change its should I say HTML, but we are allowed to insert classes in them. So if in that case, you can just use classes to control the order in that sense. Okay, so there are always an application where you need to do something like this. So, all right. Um, okay. Another important feature, and this is I find it very useful, that what if I want to control the width such that right now it's kind of fixed width, right? Uh, I want to I want them such that they're kind of nicely controlled, so it fits the entire thing. And the way I want to do is I want to keep let's say this 2, 4, and 6 to be the size of its content, and then the last three I want to be flexible so it fills the rest of the space. Okay. Um, so what I'll do is I can say, let's say tell flex, and again, with the flex, you avoid giving any kind of fixed width, because the whole purpose of the flex is to be very flexible. If you give a fixed width, then it doesn't really work, right? So there is a new syntax here. It's called flex basis. And flex basis is nothing but, think of them as width. I don't know why they call it basis, and maybe there's some reason. But let's say if I give it 25%, right? Which means 2, which is, well, yeah, well, let's just give it the last 3 of them. This 25%. Okay. So what happens? Again, it's gonna do its magic, and these 3 are pretty much the same size, and it covers and you will be wondering, like, how is it a 25% width? I don't see it, right? Let's see, and again, it's gonna do, it's gonna adjust itself based on, if I do, let's do one thing. Let's create another one. I want to do with 1 only. Let's say flex 3, and let's not do basis here. Well, something like this, and let's do the 6th one, the last one, to be 3. Okay. And do you guys know why it's coming in the top? Why the 6 is coming on the top now? I changed this to flex 3 as a class. Any idea? Remember I said flex 0 is the highest priority, so it would stay on the left side. Then flex order 2, 3, 4, right? Since I haven't given an order for 3, by default it's 0, so it's always on the top, and I said flex base is 100%, which means width's supposed to be 100%. So it occupies 100%, right? And so it doesn't let anything in. And the rest of the thing is kind of adjusting itself. Now if I say, instead of 100, what if I say, let's say 80? Is it going to make much difference? No, because in that case where the rest of the space can fit at that 20, for example, let's say 1 was maybe, or 2 in this sense, right? Let's say 2 was smaller, it might go and fit here, right? So it depends on the size of the rest of, so because it's flexible, if you say 80, then it's going to be 80%, and whichever is the other non-basis So here non-bases are, well, all rest of them are actually non-bases because I haven't given. So first it takes its 80% space, and then it lets the other stuff go, right? And remember, it's never going to be always like exactly 80%. It kind of, because it's flexible, it's just try to fix itself around 80%. Okay. So, yeah. So it tries to, yeah. Any question on this one? I know it's a lot to do in one video, but but it's not that hard, believe me. It's if you practice a little bit, this is probably the simplest thing in the CSS you ever done. And if you do a lot of React Native, this would be you would be using this a lot. um, so so Rama, did you when you use React Native, did you use Flex?
Yeah, it is full of flex. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think by default it comes with flex, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
React Native.
Yeah. Yeah. It's technically what it does. It actually converts Flex to something else eventually because um, iOS obviously doesn't understand Flex or Android. It just that's how we translate from Flex to whatever that might be, right? Where you target uh, platform. But as you can see, it has a lot really interesting use, right? It's
So where can we use a grid versus flex?
so we haven't covered the grids yet. So they are like a competitor products, right? So first came Flex, then came Grid. Okay. Uh, so I guess it's a preference. Uh, Flex is more prevalent right now. It's because of the browser support. Because Grid came much recently, it's like some of the older browsers not supported. Um, that's why a lot of people using Flex. But um, you know, I don't know how future might be for Flex, but I think once you get used to it, I think it's pretty cool. But I heard um, there are a few companies that are using grids who doesn't care about the backward, like older browsers. So yeah, I'm not a grid expert, but I'll teach you guys maybe in a couple of weeks or so.
Relax.
Grid, yeah, CSS grids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So in case in JavaScript, so for example, if you don't have the functionality, we have something called polyfill, right?
What is that?
Polyfill.
Polyfill, yeah.
So is there something similar to polyfill in CSS or CSS?
Unfortunately, CSS doesn't have a polyfill. It has the what is it called?
Similar to that.
Yeah, it has a what is it called? Remember? Yeah, it has something like that. Uh, so you would use the um, something like this, like let's say here the border, right? I'm not saying exactly like this, but you would do something like this, like a MS border and then border, right? So this is for the if you're using um, older browsers, IE. then use this or use this, right? And then there was another one. Like, yeah. Say go ahead. Go ahead.
Something like WebKit or something, right?
Yeah. So it basically, you need to provide each browser, not browser, but in like each extension. I forgot what they call it, but you have to provide, like you would do like a Moz border, means if it's some older Mozilla browsers, then take that style. If it's the latest browser, then I think there was no Chrome, because Chrome is very new, so it did not have this kind of, yeah. But this is how you would do, so that based on the browser, it will pick the style. So it's like a polyfill in a way, right? Polyfill is nothing but, if the functionality is not available, use whatever functionality you have and build this feature. It doesn't work exactly the same, but it somewhat works like that. Yeah. But unfortunately, if you say display flex in a IE9, it doesn't understand anything, right? So you cannot you cannot do much about it. You have to basically not use flex then, if you have to support IE9. Because you cannot really say that, if it's a this browser, then load this CSS. If it's this browser, then load this CSS, right? Yeah. So the standard is now, even you're not supposed to do this. You just simply use border. That's it, right? You're probably not gonna see this kind of Moz and that kind of stuff anymore. I've done it a lot when maybe 5-6 years ago, but not anymore. Especially because nowadays what happens is that if you have a Chrome on your computer, um, as soon as you open your machine, it checks and it refreshes, it installs a new browser automatically 90% of the time, unless you somehow you know disabled it. So you don't have to worry about this older browser compatibility. Yeah. Yeah, in old days, a lot of people, a lot of CSS guys, were in huge demand because of all this compatibility issue, especially with IE. Nowadays, it's becoming a bit more relaxed, and you can see with the Flexbox, you can trial and error and figure out, okay, how to center stuff and all that stuff, right? Before, you have to do a lot of calculations. Um, so this is pretty nice. Okay, so uh, oh, there is another one called Flex. I believe called. Uh, there is a called Flex Shrink and Grow. So here I can say Flex. So all I have to say Flex. This is for the Flex items, not the container. Flex, and then first is a Flex Shrink, and I think the default is 1. I haven't actually used this. This is kind of new to me, but I'm gonna show you how it works. So I don't have to do basis. I can say uh, shrink twice, grow once, and the flex basis is 25%. Just did 25 or something like that. Okay. I believe when it shrinks, it double shrink or something. Okay, so now look at this. It's like 50%, around 50%, not 25%. When it's shrinking, it doubles. Again, don't take my word for it. It's kind of new to me. I was just looking at it now. It's more than 25%, right? So this is something like shrink, grow, and flex. Shrink and flex grow is about if you shrink your window or grow your window, then this percentage changes automatically. The flex basis as you growing or shrinking. So yeah, just try it. I'm not sure exactly what it does. It's kind of mysterious. See, now it's less than maybe it is about 20%. I'm not sure. Yeah, I need to understand a little bit more, but you're probably not going to use that much. I would mostly people use as basis. And this is more like when you want to have a super flexible where things doesn't have any space around it. It automatically grows and fits itself. Like you have an image gallery, you know, you would use something like this. I'm still studying. I'll let you know next time because you're not going to use all the features of Flex. So you have to do a lot of trial and error to understand them. Okay. Yeah, so that's about it. There are a few other things which maybe I'll cover next time because with this one I think you have to do a repeat because it's a lot of stuff to cover. Okay. So I want this information to sink in. You guys need to do a little bit of practice, but it's not that hard. It's pretty simple. You just have to go and try it out a little bit. Okay. Any questions? All right. So, okay. Since my other, I mean, the other people are not here today, I remember we did. How many of you know about classes? Because I was gonna cover classes, JavaScript classes today. Or interested in learning about classes.
Yeah, I'm interested, Haman.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's start. Okay. So I'm just gonna clean this up, and I'm recording this session, so you know anybody who did not attend can look at it. All right. So the classes in JavaScript are it's much simpler than if you wanna it's one of the patterns to create objects, right? Now there is a huge difference between Java classes and JavaScript classes because JavaScript is a prototype based language, um, and this is one of the interview questions that people can ask, right? That what is the difference between Java classes and JavaScript classes? Do you know, Rama, that question? Or anybody asked you this question?
Which one? Can you come again?
What is the difference between classical? Well, what's the difference between Java classes and JavaScript classes, or like a classical inheritance and prototypical inheritance?
Uh, Yeah, they have asked me. Yeah.
And what do you think the answer would be?
So the class in JavaScript is like internally it's creating a function, right? Function prototype classes, right?
Uh-huh.
And each class in JavaScript is itself an object.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah.
And each method in class is a prototype method. So in case if you want to inherit from other class, you can just use extends. And if you want to make a constant variables, you can use static inside class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, this pretty much it. So the difference, I would put it this way, that the first difference is JavaScript. Java is a classical inheritance. What is a classical inheritance really means? Well, classical means old ways of doing things, right? That's generally what that means. If you invent something new, and then you would say, oh, that was a classic car, means it's an old. This is used to be the standard, right? So that's what it means. Prototypal inheritance is a new concept. Why the more bigger question is why prototypal inheritance? Why can't we use the classical inheritance, right? The problem with the classical inheritance is, let's say if you create a class, and the class is nothing but like a mold, right? That allows you to build objects. And so you would have methods in it, you would have some properties in it, um, all that stuff, right? And then when you build an object, the object would have all the methods that was in the mold. It will have its own properties as well. So let's say if you create a 50 objects, you will have each object would have its own independent methods. Same. So a lot of duplication, right? Um, with the prototype based inheritance, first of all, there are no classes, even though we say inheritance, but it's like a classless inheritance. Then you must be like, oh well, what about then JavaScript does have classes? Technically, JavaScript doesn't have classes. It's what they call syntactic sugar. So they provided you this uh, way of creating object, but it's not really a class. It's actually an object, right? So we create an object where you would add um, these methods. When you create objects from those class, or those class objects, should I say, uh, it doesn't have its own methods. Uh, Whenever you call methods on those class, there is a reference link to the class that it created it. So it would call those through those. So then the objects are quite lightweight in that way. Okay, so that's a one advantage of having a prototype inheritance. What is a disadvantage of having a prototype inheritance? Anybody knows that? Whenever I call a method on an object that is created using a prototype based class, I have to do a prototype lookup. And what is a prototype lookup? So let's say if I kept extending, so if I create one object and I create another object from it, another object from it, and I can have a method, for each one of them. Then if I call um, a method from the original the object that I create, it has to look up because it doesn't have its own methods, right? So it have to look up oh, do you have this method? It says no. Then you have to look at its parent and all the way to the chain, all the way to the root or base class, right? To see if this method exists in there. So every time I call something, it has to do a lookup, right? Which can be expensive. So that is a disadvantage of prototype inheritance. If somebody asks you in an interview, okay, and I think when they ask you in an interview this kind of question, you should always mention this as well. So that shows that you have a wide breadth of knowledge. Not only like you just don't only remember all the definitions, rather than you know way more about it. Okay, so all right, so let's get started. Uh, how do you create a class? So you would simply say class. If I want to create a car, that's a typical example I use, obviously. I just created a class. And usually, class would have a constructor. Why do we need a constructor? So I can set an initial properties that I need, right? It's basically a method that is called whenever I used new, right? So let's say if I have I'm setting this property called this dot color equal to color, right? Now, if I say, let's say const new, well, let's say red car equal to new car, and at this point, if I call it, it would basically, I just have to say red, and this would actually call the constructor, which is this, and it would set the color equal to red here. Okay, so if I console log this car, I'm going to see the car, and then you would see the color red, which was set using constructor, and then you would see the proto, you would see the car constructor, and also you would see the method. Oh, I don't have a method yet, but I can add a method, let's say get color or something. Get color. And when you add a method to a class, you don't have to do const and all that stuff. You just do this get color. It's pretty much looks like a Java method. I can say return this dot color. Okay. Now if I look at it, I should have that method get color. Okay, and you can see it's inside this proto. So any object that I create, so red color actually get color is actually inside the car. So when I call red car dot get color, it will get the it would call cars get color method, right? And as you can see, car itself is an object. Right? And here you can see the prototype chain. So who created car? This guy, right? It has this too. Who created that object, the class? Well, it was created by this constructible object, right? So the object is the ultimate chain, end of the chain in this prototype inheritance. So if I say has own property on red car, first it calls to itself, because the red car itself could have it can have also its own method, right? I can say I can say let's say red car dot get, well, let's just say get color equal to a function, right? Return this dot color. Okay. What would happen here? Does anybody know what this is? Now I have to get color. Anybody know what's the difference between these two methods?
So each time you create an object, a new instance of that method is created.
Yeah. It's directly inside the object, right? It's not inside the prototype, actually.
Yeah.
So this is not going to be inherited. If I extend, let's say, get color, well, I cannot extend it right now, but somehow, if I can able to extend it, it won't have this. It cannot inherit that, right? Yeah. There is a way to inherit like regular objects as well, but we're not going to get into that. Yeah. So yeah, so that ultimately, as I said, it's pretty simple. Classes are pretty simple. So you have this kind of syntax. Make sure it's a camel cased and capitalized. The class names, that's the standard. It should have a constructor. If it doesn't have constructor, it doesn't make sense to have a class, because if I call it, it could have, or you can have, let's say, set color property that you can call later on, right? So constructor, what it does, it just sets the initial property, but you can set the property later on if you want to, right? So I can say, I can have a set color, which does the same thing here, and this, right? Constructor is only called once when you create the object, but this set color I can change, I can call it anytime. So when I do this, this is a new car, this gets called, and let's say right after creating the car, I can say red car dot set color, I can say blue, and now it changes color to blue, right? So now the color is blue. All right, but as I said, they're both they're all kind of prototype methods, so it's automatically inherited. Okay, any question on the classes?
We don't have a default constructor in JavaScript, right, Hamel?
What is that?
Default constructor, like in Java. I mean, default constructor. Right? A parameterized constructor, default constructor in Java. Suppose if we don't define any, anything to the variable. If it is string, it will print null. If it is like integer, it will print 0 in Java.
Yeah, but I think in Java you would do something like this. You don't use a constructor keyword. You would do like something like this, right?
Class name.
Yeah, class name to do that. And you
do the same. In TypeScript also, we do the same like in Java. I mean, like normal compile time languages.
Yeah. So this is, I think, I don't know if there's any other constructor. This is the only constructor um, it has. Partly because, unlike Java, where what is it called? Function overloading? Was it overloading?
Yeah,
In
it's a overloading. It's
Yeah,
constructor overloading.
overloading, right? So you can create multiple constructor with different kind of arguments
Yeah,
or signature, right? And that does the different
basically
things.
the type and the number of arguments.
Yeah, yeah. But with the constructor, you can. It's much easier here. In you can simply do something like this, right? Which
Even
means,
in type, we can't define. We can't do constructor overloading even in TypeScript.
oh, you cannot. Oh, okay.
We cannot do constructor overloading in TypeScript, even though it's like a compile time language class,
Hmm.
normal classic class,
Yeah,
but we can't do constructor overloading there.
right. But the good thing
Maybe
about
the JavaScript, right? So maybe because of that.
yeah, 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 yeah. But because it's flexible other ways. That's why there is no overloading, functional overloading anyway in JavaScript because you can have like a spread operator. It doesn't really need to have fixed amount of argument. You can internally you can say, okay, if it's X number argument, do this. If it's Y, do this. You can have, yeah.
So can we do encapsulation JavaScript ML like like Pojo class, like getters and setters, right?
Uh, yeah, it has getters and setters also. Yeah, yeah.
Like encapsulation, declaring. I think we don't have private modifiers, right? Like private, public in JavaScript.
No,
So
it's only public.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
so
encapsulation,
everything
yeah.
everything is public in JavaScript. Uh, though, if somebody says, "Can I create, um, let's say, private?" Can you do that?
I think we have JavaScript.
Yeah, can you do that? I know there is a
I
no.
believe I have seen some examples like for an object, we can set the property like read only or something like that.
Oh, well, that's still not. That's just a read only, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's not. Private means, in
Yeah, it's not seen outside the class. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's so in Java you have private, public, and protected, right? Three.
Yes.
In JavaScript, everything is uh, public, right? So I can anything any property that this red car has, I can directly call using red car dot. So here I can simply do this, right? As if I want to alert red car dot color, right? This is public means, right? I can directly access it. Um, Private means only methods can object access it, right? So if I want to do something like this, I should be able to do. I can create um, like using closures. I used to know this. I can find out an example where you can simulate that.
I
I
think we have discussed earlier, Himal, I guess, regarding this private properties.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
couldn't remember it.
Yeah, I think I gave you the example also. I forgot that example. Basically, you can create using a closure. You should be able to create like a private method inside uh, a private method that you cannot call. Yeah, I can find an
Or can we
example.
use like IFI like
Y-
embedding more functions to create private variables?
yeah, you can do that as well. Um, Actually, the class itself is an iffy. Um, Hold on, I might have an example somewhere. Okay. Uh, I'm just looking through my, see if there is somewhere. So let me do one thing. The So if somebody asks you what is actually um, a class is inside, uh, you can always do this like const car equal to. It's actually an iffy, right? And inside this iffy, we have uh, some function that setting the color. If somebody asks you that how the class works internally, um, I would give this example. And then if I have a method, so this is a constructor, and um, then you can say car dot prototype dot drive equal to a function. Let's just say something like this, and I'll just return the car. Okay, and then I would say, let's say let const new car equal to car, let's say red. So what happens here is that when I call the car, which is nothing, it immediately executes this, right? And then whatever returns is basically nothing but this car, and which is just nothing but a constructor. So it sets a red property. Let's look at it. It's called dir. Right, so it has a prototype method, and oh, do I have to pass? Oh, I guess. Let's see. So if I say no color, did it set the color?
I think you didn't pass the color into the car, right? You're not passing the argument in the outer function.
Oh, right. Right. Like this. No, color, no, outer function.
And you should also pass inside the function, right? In the first line.
Oh, yeah. Here, right? Here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. There's some error though. Color is not defined. Not just, hold on. Okay, let me just think about this one for a second. Okay, so actually I don't need this. I have a car. Oh, I would need some temporary color, so I'm just gonna say red here, something like this. I think that's what's missing. Card. Some default. I don't know. I mean, I think. Well, I should pass it here, but I'm trying to think when it immediately runs. So even if I don't pass it here, it should be nothing. It should be fine. Yeah, this should actually work. I don't need the color here. Yeah, this should work because what happens when I say car, it immediately runs this and creates this constructor and adds this and returns, and then that car I'm passing. So I don't really need any arguments here. Oh, that is my. I always make this mistake. New car. Okay, that was a problem. It was supposed to be new car. That's why. Yeah, because when I call this, I have to use new, right? Everybody got this? Yeah, it was this problem, not the because here, this would be like a here I can pass color. Let's say if I say blue, color. What if I don't pass any color? Does it make it blue? I don't know. No, it's undefined. Now this still needs to be passed. Yeah, so here the this doesn't make sense. Yeah. So this example would work as it is. Yeah, we're just missing the new. Well, I should have a color here. And then, yeah, and then it gives you red here. But as you can see, this is internally is doing something like this. Yeah. Okay. If I add another method here directly, so let's say if I say this dot, well, this is going to be static method. And that's just going to only work on the class itself. I just wanted to show you called. Okay. So now you see the prototype method, drive, that works on the, if I say drive, and it's going to give me driving, right? But why does it always do that? Well, I don't need actually a console log here because I already have it. I get driving here, but what if I call, how do I call static method here? So this static methods are actually methods on a class itself, right? So I cannot call it on the new. It would be directly for the well, you know what? Actually, not the case. You can still call the static method here. Let's see. Well, I can call car dot static method, right? Nope. Is that the right method? Oh, sorry, not like this. X. Can I do this one? Yeah, then you get, so this is like a static method, which is not a prototype method. And the prototype method, yeah, so I'm directly, it's part of the car directly. It's not the, so any object that you create from the car, it doesn't have access to it. So I cannot call it on a new car, right? Because it won't, that's why it gives you an error. New car static method is not a function, right? So yeah, so that's the difference between like static method and prototype method. And the prototype methods are like, I think Java. So Indra, you know Java very well.
Yes, Hemant.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, is that a similar concept in Java? The
Yeah,
this.
Java, we have a call like static means a class level data. If you declare a property as static,
Yeah.
it's a class level data.
Yeah.
But unlike in JavaScript, we can access the static method using the new object. I mean, using the object or even a class. Unlike in JavaScript, we can't access through object.
Yeah.
But in Java, we can even do like new color dot, the static method.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
I don't think we can call with a new keyword intra. It's same in Java, I believe. If you use like static keyword before the variable, you cannot call it the instance. You can just call it directly with the class name.
Yeah, you can do both, I guess.
Just try it once. Yeah, I believe we cannot do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
It's
I
same as JavaScript.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what I remember is that that's how. I mean, I did Java a long time ago, so I forgot most of it. Um,
Yeah, you can just call directly via class. Yeah.
yeah, but in a JavaScript, if you wanna, so this is how it's done internally. That's what I wanted to show you. Like if somebody asks you, okay, how it's done internally, it's basically static method is not a prototype method. It's directly in the class itself and not the object that it creates, right? Um, but if I were to build a class and the static method, so let's say I would do, let's say, class car, and I can say, static um, static method, and so I just have to use a static keyword, right? Compared to if I have a drive, which is an instance method. So here what I would say console log um, driving, right? And here I would say console log static called. Okay, and so I can call car dot static method, and if I want to call drive, I would have to say const new car equal to new car, and then new car dot drive. You got it? So anybody knows why do we use static method?
It's like a singleton pattern, right? It's not create instance every time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not for. It's basically used for like miscellaneous, and at least in JavaScript, you would use it as like how do I say, like utilities. Yeah, utility methods. So for example, if you have a car, right? So drive you need in every single car, right? The static method example would be like compare price, right? And then you can say, let's say car 1 and car 2, which are two objects that are created using the car, and then inside you can compare. Okay, so it's a utility method for for car. Yeah. What else? Okay. I'm trying to think. What can we? Okay, so let's look at the subclasses or how to extend, and then we can stop there. Similar extending, so creating class from a parent class is similar to Java, pretty much, right? So you would say class Toyota extends car, right? Basically, internally, it creates a prototype chain for you. Okay, and here you would another important thing is in the base class you don't have to call the constructor. But in subclass, you have to call the constructor. You know why? Do you know why do you have to call the constructor in the subclass?
I think it will inherit the parent class properties.
Yeah, so you need to inherit the parents class constructor.
Normally we use like super in Java.
Yeah, so that's why you need constructor. So if you don't give a constructor inside extended class, then it would give you an error. Okay, because you are extending, it makes sense to have super, right? If I want to call, let's say, static method in an extended class, how would I do that? So let's say I have a compare price class right here. What if I want to have the exactly the same static method here? But here it will be something else. So here I can, if I want to call my parents the class, I can simply do, so let's say here I would simply do this. Super dot compare price. If I want to change the behavior of it, so I can do something else. Let's say if I have a third parameter or something, you know, X, Y, Z or something, and I can do something with it, right? So I can call my parents static method here and change this behavior. Okay. Same thing with the instance method as well. I can do the same thing.
Do we have polymorphism in JavaScript element? I mean, like overriding.
Yeah.
This is
You
like
can.
overriding, right?
Yeah.
You're overriding. Yes, compare price.
Yeah, you can override. Yeah, you can override. So I can have my own drive method right here, right? I can have my own drive method. I can, I can call super dot drive. This would call the parent, and I can do something else here as well. Or I can just completely override it. So it's completely different method. Is that how it's in a Java? I think so, right?
You mean overriding?
Yeah. You do?
Yes, actually in inheritance you'll do overriding. Subclass you'll override the method.
So do you call it using super also? Like if I want to call parents.
Or if you want to call the parent, we will use super.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, I mean for the methods like this, super dot drive.
Methods, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So classes are pretty simple. Yeah, simple in in JavaScript because it doesn't have all the complexity that Java classes might have. You
but
can.
this we can use, for the normal, normal compile time language developers.
I know.
Classes. It's confusing. For me, all time it confused. Whenever.
Yeah. Again, because remember I told you it's a prototype method. So if I want to add another method here, let's say get color, what I can do is simply I can do this. I can say Toyota dot prototype dot get color equal to a function, and I can do this dot return this dot color, something like that, because it's just nothing but a simple object, right? Obviously I can add it inside here also, get color, but I can, if I want to do it, I can do it like this as well, because it's not a real class. Okay, it's just a prototype method. Yeah, there is a way to actually create a private um, um, I have private properties using closures. I have an example somewhere. It's a little bit complex, so I have to I have it somewhere. I'll find it and I'll share it with you guys. Though you're probably never gonna use it. Um, and this is for like interview sake, you know. Nowadays you can see that interview can ask all kind of stuff, so it's good to have all the knowledge. And regardless of interview, you need to have all the knowledge anyway, right? So you can um, properly answer all the questions, right? Um, yeah, so I think that's about it. Any questions?
No, like, do you have any session on DOM? Because I mean, like in the future,
Um,
object
DOM
model.
DOM manipulation.
Yeah, like just worry about the DOM and yeah, DOM manipulation.
DOM manipulation. Okay. Um, yeah, I can create one. You let me know what. Usually, there are two ways to manipulate DOM, right?
Well, in Angular, like we use some directives to do DOM manipulation, but I want to learn in pure JavaScript. I mean, like I know about like using selectors,
Yeah.
and all, but I want to like in a basic. I mean, like a conceptual level understanding of DOM, how HTML converts say DOM object model and all.
Yeah. So so you were talking about something like this. You can say like a document dot get element by ID, and then XYZ ID, let's say, dot inner HTML ML equal to hi, or something like this, right? So this is like a pure JavaScript where I'm saying that find an ID which is XYZ and set its HTML to hi. Okay, something like this, right? Yeah.
They are doing. We have frameworks to do all manipulations, but I want to learn the basics of the structure.
Yeah, sure. So the DOM manipulation has a few parts. One is iterating through the DOM, right? Um, then manipulation is done using like most probably selectors, or get element by ID or class or name or something. And a lot of people learn using jQuery as well, because jQuery is much simpler. So if we wanna do it using jQuery, that's much simpler, because simply over there you would do the same line. You can do something.
Even capturing events, all those stuffs like big events, all.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll
Propagation, a lot of concepts. I know the names, but not thoroughly what it is. Especially even propagation and all. Like,
yeah.
I read some articles. Always, it's like somewhat unclear for me.
Okay, yeah, sure. I can. Yeah.
Handlings and all.
Yeah, event handling. I can create. I can create one. Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out what exactly you wanted to. So just for now, but I'll create a session for that. However, if you want to just look at the capturing, so YouTube, I have a, if you just want
I have
to,
seen a video on event propagation, I guess. I'm not sure.
yeah, I have one on the propagation. I don't know why it's showing the video. I don't know. Oh, video manager. Somewhere. I think it's like a second or third. Yeah, third one, I guess. Right, this one called event bubbling and capturing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll create a session on that. You can check this one out, but I'll create a specific on all the, because this one is only covers like when you click on, or when you have any kind of event like click or mouse or whatever. What happens is that, for example, this web page, right? Let's say if I click on this edit button, what does it mean is when I click on this edit button, which means I technically clicked on its parent, which might be somewhere here, and its parent, which would be this, and its parent, which would be this container, and ultimately the entire HTML. So if there's an click event anywhere, it's going to get triggered, right? Um, and often you might want to think about, okay, do I want to execute all the event? A lot of time, yes. Sometimes I want to stop certain things so I can cancel those certain events. The way it usually propagates, there are two ways to propagate. It starts from the root to bottom or bottom to root, right? So that bubbling and capturing, um, things like that, right? So yeah, I can create, start with the event and cover a lot of event related how to, and I'm assuming you want to do pure JavaScript, right? Like not jQuery or anything like that, right? Okay. Yeah, I can do it in Angular and all that stuff. You don't have to worry about it because um, you kind of do, but your framework will take care of a lot of things. Um, but in reality, you would have to, if you do pure Java, you have to do a lot of this by yourself. And I think it's good to understand event bubbling and capturing because you might have to deal with certain type of event where you want to cancel them, right? So in a complex application, like when I if I want to right click and show some menu or something, and if there is a right click event somewhere else, then I want to cancel one of them, right? So yeah. And hey, Bhuvneshwar, yeah. So you ask what is IIFE? So IIFE is a immediately invoked function expression. Okay. Um, Basically, a function that gets called as soon as it's um, where it's written. You don't have to really, where as soon as it's defined. So, for example, if I have a function, I can say, let's say I'm just going to put alert hi, and usually you would have some sort of name, right? You can say const call hi equal to this, right? and then I have to call it, right? When I do that, it will say hi. But what if I don't want to do two-step? I want to do one step. Then I can simply do this. This is called immediately invoked function expression. I don't need to name it because you name it so you can call it multiple times. Here I don't need to call multiple times because it's anonymous. So this is called immediately invoked function expression. Okay. Um, yeah. And the I would say, I don't know if you guys, but nowadays you don't use immediately invokes function expression. You guys know why? Nowadays you don't. You would never use it in a if you in a framework. Why? Are you guys saying something? Oh, did I? I can hear.
So what's the question again?
Oh, why would you never use nowadays? You would never use a function immediately invokes function expression.
Maybe because of the modules in year 6.
Yeah, yeah. So there are multiple reasons, right? The first of all, we used to use immediately invoke function expression because in old JavaScript there was no um, block scope, right? So with the immediately invoke function expression, you can create a block scope. Second thing was modules. So it will give you like a if you create your own library, it's nice to have immediately invoke function expression because of the scoping issue because it will create like for example you create a jQuery, then you would pass um, the jQuery like pass the let's say like a dollar sign or something inside and um, inside I can have this as whatever I want to use inside and whatever the and inside I can create my own scope which is not accessible from outside. Okay, but with modules I have solved a lot of those issues, um, so I don't have to use it anymore. Yeah, so it's good to know it can be asked in an interview. However, you're probably not going to be using nowadays. Yeah, unless you build your own JavaScript library, which is what you want to make it compatible with older browsers. Does that answer the question, Bhuvaneshwari? Okay. All right, guys. So yeah, that's about it. So let's. So the next. Okay, let's think about next time. So Indra, what I'll do, I'll create the events uh, lecture probably not next time, but the week after that. Because since I would need to come up with some good examples to cover, and so I'm thinking next time I'll do for CSS part. I would go a bit more in Flexbox and maybe do some real work with it. Okay, and in JavaScript part. Um, do you know which part I did not cover with you guys? I think I know I covered with Rama, like the method chainings and stuff like that. Maybe I'll do that with you. Okay. Because that's where we are at the at this stage in this second batch, and we haven't covered like so what we haven't covered the promises. We covered the callback functions. We haven't covered the promises, async await, method chainings. This stuff is still remain. So yeah, I'm gonna try to cover, and also in the CSS we need to cover the CSS grid, which we haven't covered yet. So and then we can finish all the CSS stuff. Okay. Um, all right, guys.
Thank you, Emil.
All right. Yeah, and feel free to let me know if any particular topic you guys want to cover, so that I can be flexible that way.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Hey, good luck with Rama. Good luck with your uh, interview.
I don't think I'll be getting it, but that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, but I think this is an interesting experience for you.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing. Any challenge is a good thing, you know. You otherwise you would never do this kind of stuff by own or your own, right?
Yeah, in 24 hours,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, your brain would go on a overdrive to figure out all this stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing, yeah.
Good luck, Rama.
At least I finished assignment, yeah, so it's fine, yeah.
Yeah, so Indra, this is interesting stuff. Maybe Rama can share once he's done. So he got a couple of interesting interview where they gave him like a full design, and he had to um, basically build the whole thing in 24 hour, where he has to use like quite a bit of things. Okay, like this puzzle thing. What is it called? Maze puzzle,
Please.
where you can actually enter from one end, and you have to go and exit from the other end. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just share the Word file
Okay.
with him.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Thanks, Rama, and
All right.
good luck.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Bye. Bye, guys.
Yeah. Have a good day. Bye.
Okay. Bye, Bhuvneshwari.